punched him right in the face. That was the whole story.
And he deserved it.
He did.
He totally
But
did.
you should not have used the taser where you used the taser.
He was screaming, "Don't tase me, bro," just like the YouTube video, but I just kept doing
that is an old.
Did he have a mustache?
He did not, and that's why he got the taser. So it's
I'm scared without. Okay, can we speculate on what Ryan's doing right now? What do you think he's doing?
We probably shouldn't, but it's go time, isn't it?
I hope he's adopting another cat. We can pre-show for a bit. I guess if you want to, Kelly wants to roll. Let's roll.
We're on.
Kelly said start her up, so go.
Well, she wants to roll.
Yep.
You want to start it? All right, here we go.
Start it up.
Let's do it.
Hello and welcome to Black Hills Information Security's Taco and About News. This March 4th, 2024. Welcome. This week, we've got malicious GitHub repos. We've got dubious claims of personal massagers being infected with malware. We've got ransomware, as always. We've got executive orders. And we've got an illustrious cast of characters. We've got mustache, no mustache, no mustache, kind of mustache, no mustache. Everyone's
Menopause mustache?
Wait, is your mustache considered a menopause mustache? I hope not.
I guess it is now by Kelly. Gosh, thank you.
You should see your doctor about that. So, okay, what are we talking about first? Executive order? I mean, I was reading this. Essentially, there's an executive order. The headline officially is Executive Order on Preventing Access to Americans' Bulk Sensitive Personal Data and United States Government-Related Data by Countries of Concern. So that's really a mouthful.
What's the acronym for that?
Does anyone have any? What's the acronym? Yeah, no, I can't do it. Yeah, they should have come up with a cool acronym. They didn't. That was a big missed opportunity. But essentially, this is saying you can't sell our data to Saudi Arabia because we want to sell our data to Saudi Arabia, right? Is that the correct hot take?
Maybe we could clarify that a little, Corey. I think, well, first of all, let's talk about what the intention was. There is so much data about us, that whole adage of if it's free, it's not really free. They're just selling your data. I think it's become more and more of a risk as we look at how much data is being collected on us. President Biden stepped in and said that he wants to limit outbound data transfers of data of U.S. citizens. And I'm kind of for it, quite frankly.
So what, and I don't know if you know, I don't want to put you too much on the spot here, Kelly, but does my preferences for cat memes, is that considered sensitive data? Or is it what are they counting in here of sensitive data?
Depends on
There's
the color
6.
of the cat.
Oh, and the mustache. There's actually 6 categories of sensitive data. Number 1, bioidentifiers. I don't know. Is there anybody on that panel who is okay with their bioidentifiers being sold?
They definitely have been.
I mean, they
What
have
is that? Is that like a finger? What is a face? My face?
DNA, probably.
Is that one?
It can be either color of your eyes. It could be if you've got a twitch. It could even include something like how you walk. If you're a saunterer or if you walk with really short steps and kind of uptight. So bioidentifiers.
I'm sorry, but is there these things are so specific. I am so scared right now.
What is this about? What's the short? What?
We're figuring out if
you're listing
if other
things
countries
that
can download the data to clone us.
Yeah. Well, Kelly's listing examples of sensitive data, and she's listing things that are super terrifying and super real. And I was not prepared for how real they were.
Are we?
Yeah, I mean,
we
the
live?
way you walk, gait analysis, right? That's what she's talking about. It is actually, if someone's wearing a face mask and everything, you can potentially identify who they are based on how they walk. So I guess I fully support the concept, but I'm also kind of curious, what is a country of concern? Because we're the country of most concern from my perspective. But is this related to the Gaza Palestine thing? Is it like people are worried about like people that are pro or anti one side or the other being targeted with hacking? Like, how does this tie, or is it just completely not related to anything else?
Well, Corey, I don't know if it's directly related to Gaza, but you remember me talking about the origins of GDPR, and I said in Europe, GDPR's origins go all the way back to World War II and the terrible things that happened in Germany. And in our lingo today, they were using bioidentifiers to mass extinction of people of a certain ethnic and religious background. And as the world is becoming more and more divisive, I believe we're trying to protect things that really do speak to who we are as people. If it is our gait, if it is our bio-identifiers, if it's our religion, if we're private about it. So I don't know if there was an exact event that led to this executive order, or if it was just thunder building in the horizon.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's super fascinating. I guess who does this impact the most? What people? I mean, data brokers are the obvious, like where my mind goes, but who is benefiting from shipping off American sensitive data to countries of concern? Or is it more a criminal thing? Is it not like a capitalism thing? It's more like a criminal thing.
So there's two problems with that. I mean, of course, the whole like countries of concern thing is a concern, but this actually goes back to a class action lawsuit that was brought against Microsoft for, I think it was still Internet Explorer back in the day. And Microsoft was collecting a lot of telemetry off of browsers of users, and they were caught doing it, of course. And the class action lawsuit was basically, you're aggregating a whole bunch of our data, Microsoft, and you shouldn't do it. And in that particular case, the judge dismissed it on a very interesting kind of premise. Under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, you have to exceed over $5,000 of damages in order to bring a case against somebody for breaking the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And the judge said that not a single one of the victims in the class action lawsuit could actually show that there was $5,000 of damages associated with that lawsuit. And I'm bringing up this particular case because it's similar, right? If we have this data that's getting leaked out, we have gate data as an example being released. It's not just an issue that that data is released. It's not that that data does or doesn't cause damage. The biggest problem is, did it cause damages in excess of over $5,000? So there's a bunch of these different things whenever we're talking about these data sets and all of these different things, whether it's countries of concern, whether it's a legal thing here, actually pinning down the total amount of damages can be very, very difficult in U.S. and international courts.
Makes sense. I guess we'll have to kind of track the fallout of this on the show. I mean,
like how it just died. I started quoting laws, and everyone's like, oh.
My first thought was, how can I cause damage that's under
He just did a
$5,000?
restream fart. Jesus.
I think basically this one is one where I think we're going to have to monitor and see the repercussions of this. It's hard when the, executive orders or just executive directives are kind of $1 or a dime a dozen these days of like, I just, all people should drink black coffee, and like no one does it and no one cares. It's like whatever. Yeah. But maybe it'll actually be impactful. We'll see. It seems like it has a lot of teeth baked into it, but you never know. It'll probably get struck down by a judge in let's say 36 hours.
I'll give you another example. Do you remember Strava? It's like a run keeper. It's a exercising app that shows you geographically where you've been running.
Yeah, I remember stories on this.
Yeah, do you remember how they were pretty much mapping out bases based on people's Strava data?
Yeah, undisclosed bases. They would have a heat map of where is common to exercise, and if you looked in the desert in Afghanistan, you would find the bases because the heat map is people recording activities, and yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, anyway, who's got another article for us? Andrew, I know you wanted to talk about infected.
Did we talk about the 2FA codes?
Not yet.
No.
You want to talk about 2FA codes?
God, this is one of those articles that just keeps giving. Like when you start reading it, It's like through the looking, you expect to get smaller or larger somehow by you actually reading it. Leaky database spilled 2-factor codes for the world's tech giants. There's a technology company, YX International. They do cellular networking, and they actually send the SMS text messages on behalf of various cell providers. So far, that doesn't sound terrifying at all. Arnag Shin, a good faith security researcher and expert in discovering sensitive and inadvertently exposed data sets leaked to the internet, found the database, which was wide open to the internet. The only thing that you needed to access of this database was a browser. And inside of this exposed database, it included contents of text messages sent to users, including one-time passcodes, password reset links for some of the world's largest tech companies, including Facebook, WhatsApp, Google, TikTok, and others. And it had logs going all the way back to 2023, and it was growing in size constantly. So it kept on going up. Now, whenever YX International was asked about this vulnerability, they basically were like, yeah, we quote unquote sealed the vulnerability, which is awesome, I guess.
They invented a whole new sentence.
They also said that they would not say how long the database was exposed.
Or whether anyone accessed it, because they don't store access logs.
So wait. No. This one we know the answer to, because when TechCrunch asked YX International about this, they said their server did not store access logs, which could have determined if anyone other than Sen had discovered the exposed database and its contents.
That's the legal team is like super happy about that.
Yeah,
right
so
now. They're like,
somebody handed them a sticker of like the no logs, no breach. And they were like, the legal team saw that and they go, yes.
Yeah, we need someone to take no woman, no cry and change that no logs, no breach. It's oh my God.
Yeah. So, I mean, does anyone know any technical details? Was it just like a random MySQL database? Like,
I don't know. Oh, here, I can actually pull it up real
quick. Bucket? Like, I'm just curious, like, what was how badly did they mess up? That's my question. Obviously not having logs.
Look, if you can just access it with the browser, at that point, it's bad, right? Like, it's really, really bad at that point.
I'm thinking PHP my admin with default creds. Who's with me?
Yeah, this whole episode of this show is all going to be like PHP is bad and WordPress is bad. Okay, you should stop using those things. So who knows, what they were actually using from a technical perspective. By the way, Corey, your mic is a little weak sauce compared to others.
I'll just yell. It's fine.
That's what we do here anyway. So Andrew, like once again, we're looking at this like it's going to come down to some unsecured like cloud service that every time the admin logged into it, there's bright red warnings. It's like, this is completely wide open. It's like, yeah, but whatever.
Yeah, we actually talk about this all the time, like the value of doing both types of logging in cloud provider environments. Because if you're not logging data plane events and control plane events, you lose some resolution on what happened. Like in this case, it looks like it's just data plane. But of course, if you were to compromise the system, you can pivot from there into the account, or you can pivot laterally. And most of the logs that people turn on in cloud environments, believe it or not, they actually don't track data plane events by default. So that's a fun and interesting fact.
Great. I didn't know that. Thank you. That's
so.
I got a question.
Sorry.
Is it not now for most providers? Do you have to pay for that, or is it just you just turn it on?
So in most providers, the actual logging service is free. You just pay for the gigabytes of storage that
those.
So
you do kind of pay for it, but not enough to be a concern, really.
I mean, it really depends on what you're doing in the environment. Like I've worked some really gnarly incidents where the audit logs were like 700 gigabytes per day, for example, and I've worked some where it's like 500 megabytes per day. It just depends on how active that cloud environment actually is.
Wow, that's crazy pills.
It is.
Very cool. All right. Anyone else have anything else on this? Because there are so many like horrible, stupid hacks that are coming here.
Okay, I have one more question. Should this be stored in a database at all? I mean, why would you have a database of like, I mean, I guess you technically need a database to be like, this password reset link is valid for this amount of time. Like, I guess. But why would you store the actual code? I guess I don't. Shouldn't it be hashed? Shouldn't the code be hashed?
But it's in a database, early bird, Corey. but it's in a database. That's what you do. You put data in a database. Why are you questioning this? Like,
Is that why my passwords are all in clear text? Is that
this
why?
seems completely legit. And the password reset links, yeah, of course we're going to store those because
They're
we
not
might
sensitive.
need them.
Nothing stored in a URL is sensitive. We know this.
Never, ever. Yeah.
I
Now,
was gonna
Corey, I
put
just want you to
enough
think of this. Would you rather be in a situation where you don't have it and you need it? Or would you have a situation where your server is exposed to the internet and everyone can gain access to it with a browser? I want you to think long and hard about that, Corey.
All right, I thought about it, and what I thought was no logs, no breach. I'm good.
Good go. Awesome. I'm glad we're all clear on that, too. Somebody was going to say something else. Go for it.
Yeah,
I
of
was
course,
just going to say,
Go ahead, Kelly.
Go ahead, Andrew.
No.
I was just,
Oh, Kelly, go
Okay.
ahead and go.
I really appreciated Ben from Casey's comment about logs. You got country and Western, and I think that's really important to remember.
I think that makes about as much sense the conversation that Corey and I just had. So Ben just summed that up. Andrew, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, even if you are storing these things in a database, right? Like there's lots of great facilities for protecting these things in databases. And again, like there's really no excuse to at least like context aware encrypt that column that's full of sensitive data, or like break it out to another table that somehow is protected or is like auto expiring or has time to live on those values. So there's like a lot of missteps here.
So Andrew, it's almost like you're saying you can store this stuff that you don't need to store that actually opens up wide security vulnerabilities. And seriously, you don't need it after a couple of minutes, and you can do it securely in the future.
Yeah, if you want to follow these anti-patterns, there's ways to do it right. And people certainly, I mean, I've seen tons of architecture diagrams where people do things like this, right? Because you have to be able to verify the token on both sides. And yes, you could do it with a hash, but like, let's say it's a first iteration or something, and you're just not going to come back to it. You know, it's totally valid, and people do it all the time, but like put the right controls on it.
Okay, last hot take or question about this. Big tech companies are apparently using this. I mean, it comes up on the show almost every week, but the whole supply chain management, third-party risk management thing. We know that, you know, the CISOs, their biggest concern or one of their biggest concerns this year is supply chain risk management or third-party risk management, whatever you want to call it. Is there anything like, how do you pick a SMS provider that doesn't suck? Is there a way to do it? How should I, if I'm a CISO and I was using XY International, how did I get in this boat? Why am I using XY International, and what can I do differently?
Just YOLO. I don't know what you would have done differently in this. Like so one of the things I think you might ask for is a letter of attestation. Like, when's the last time they were tested? And was it tested by a reputable firm? And good luck like defining what a reputable firm is. By the way, if you do need a reputable firm, we'd like to humbly
We'll
put
find
forth
your
Black Hills
exposed
Information
databases.
Security. All right. So, but moving on. But no, I think that's a good question. And, you know, I almost wonder sometimes if like externals, like the pen test reports for companies, like let's just kill the security scorecard type companies and just make it so like all external pen tests are like public record, like cryptocurrency implementation, smart contracts are publicly posted. The audits of them many times are. That's just one of the things I think would be really, really, really cool because, like, seriously, from a supply chain perspective, we got jack unless somebody has something magical that they can throw it and say, yes, this is in fact a trustworthy company that gets them a good seal of approval.
Like, yeah, if you search this company, the only thing that comes up is breach. Like, like they don't.
Okay,
they don't,
okay.
They're not.
That would be a good first check, right? Like, do a search for breach.
Like,
but
is this like? How do they even find? Like, they have 50 to 1 according to LinkedIn. They have 51 to 200 employees. Like, how did these providers like? How was Twitter and Google like? Oh yeah, we should use them. That makes
a lot
sense.
of them are just
They were
people who
cheaper
know
than
people.
Twilio, that's
Honestly, a lot of them are just people who know people.
Yeah.
And
Hey, I'd like to weigh in on this.
go for it, Kelly.
I know you guys are very technical in nature, and that's super cool. One thing I didn't get a chance to talk about last week was NIST released the updated version of the cybersecurity framework, version 2.0. And there was two big things that they updated. They added another function. So remember, you had identify, protect, respond, detect, you know, the other functions. They've added a governance function. Different conversation, different time, but they specifically focused on cyber supply chain risk management. And one of the things they did is they said, listen, yes, absolutely, this is hard to manage. They've come up with a guide. I can't remember exactly what they call it, a rapid deployment guide or a implementation guide, but it takes the issue of supply chain management, no matter the size of your organization, and steps you back from it and starts with what we've seen over and over again, John, is inventory. If you can't even tell me who is in your supply chain, let's start there, just like we start with inventory with the CIS controls. So I think there are solutions. And Corey, to your question, maybe most people at that organization didn't even know that they were using that company for SMS
Probably.
tooling.
That's probably 100% true. I mean, that's a really good point.
Bidder.
The first step is figure out who you're using. The second step is ask for a letter of attestation. So those 2 steps should take about 5 years.
So
get back to
if
us. Let us know how it goes.
If you're at the CTO of Google, you're like, I just got a text message from us. Who are we using for that? Then
It's
work
like
backwards.
Jeff Bezos bringing in Amazon boxes into like meetings and being like, this was delivered to the wrong address. And they're like, what? We didn't think you would get this deep.
All right. Well, I got the next story I want to talk about. It's from Dark Reading. I got to be honest. There's a couple of stories here that are just fantastic this week. Hats off to Ryan. But this one, eBay, VMware, McAfee sites hijacked in sprawling phishing operation. Trusted brands like The Economist are also among the 8,000 entries compromised by Operation Pseudo Mailing, which is the heart of a larger operation of a single threat actor. By the way, right off the bat.
I thought it was subdo mailing.
No. Oh, subdo. Yeah, subdo mailing. So, yes, it should have been better. It would be better if it was pseudo mailing. Maybe someday we'll get it. So, this is interesting because they use an example of like Martha Stewart. Like if you send an email from like Martha Stewart's domain, it's able to make it through and it's just fine. Like Martha Stewart goes through, you've approved Martha Stewart. That's fantastic. But if we go back 22 years ago with a domain that was abandoned, it was like Martha Stewart sweepstakes or something like that. Where is it? MSN Martha Stewart sweeps.com. is a subdomain promotional sweeps campaign 22 years ago. Though the domain was abandoned for 21 years, it was privately re-registered again through Namecheap in 2022. Now, what happens is the SPF records, if I think I'm getting this right, or SPM records. Whenever you set up a domain like Martha Stewart Sweeps and you have Martha Stewart, it basically trusts not just the main domain, but all of the other subdomains that are out there as well. So they're going through, they're sweeping up a whole bunch of these different subdomains for these different companies that have become abandoned over the years. SPF, thank you so much. And they're sending the emails from the domains that are timed out, dead and gone. But because at some point in the past they were associated, it's allowed to go right through and make it into the inbox. Which,
so this is a stale. Okay, this is a combination of 2 things, right?
Uh-huh.
Number one, a bad SPF config.
Yep.
That had a stale address in it. That's 64 address. And 2, a stale DNS domain that had the address that pointed to it, right?
Yep.
So it's like tech debt turned into a horrible.
Yeah, but think about this. By the way, Loki, if you could do us a favor, you did a blog about this last week. If you could share that blog post with everybody, that would be amazing. I recommend sharing it out on the Discords and the YouTubes because it'll be stared there forever. But Ben of KC says, unfortunately, Microsoft insists this is not a problem.
Yes,
It's a feature.
Yeah.
And I think also
Working is intended.
I think also for SPF records, I'm trying to find the setting, but hopefully somebody in the chat will know that like there is some sort of setting that can go into for Microsoft to just like override and deliver the mail anyways.
Yep.
It's like
it's soft fail, so you can soft fail or hard fail on SPF.
Yeah,
So
that's
for-
like some other setting to
providers-
where it's like Microsoft was like, we need this, like otherwise like so much email is just not going to get delivered if you go SPF fail. It's like, no, if you're like O365,
Well, most
like
providers,
skip
most
that and
people
go.
don't even use SPF
Oh,
at
yeah.
all. What they do is they set it to wide open. They let their email filter handle the rest, which is
So-
like not a, arguably not a great idea. But
Look,
Yeah.
I'm gonna just admit this. Like years and years and years ago, looked at the way emails were being sent, all of these different things, center policy frameworks and DKIM and all this stuff. And I looked at that and I'm like, I'm not putting my hand in that box because I'm gonna get pricked by a gom jabbar. Sorry, I saw Dune 2. By the way, if you haven't seen Dune 2, you should. It is fantastic. But at any rate, that's a
The
squirrel.
knife fights.
Where's the ouchie? Like, where is the config somewhere that you have to go and clean up? Like, where is it stale? Or is it
Well, I have
because
bad
it was
news for you,
associated 22 years ago that all of these email servers just remember these two things were associated with each other? Like,
Yeah.
where is that config so that people can go and like, where is it? Where is the config? So we can fix it. Where would we do that?
It's in the parent. It's in the parent DNS domain in this case, I believe. So like if it is like xyz.marthastewart.com, it'd be in marthastewart.com for the subdomain. So wherever that is hosted. So bonus points to the attacker, right? If this domain was registered on Namecheap before and they re-registered it because they wanted to use the IPs from the same mail relay by capitalizing on just knowing who it was registered with, because those IPs probably haven't changed in 20 years.
Yeah.
it's
And
really
you can use
it's a really cool attack, but it's just phishing, so it's like not that cool. But it is like all the stuff. Like it's such a cool attack, but then it results in just like people clicking emails, which is like,
See, but this is one of those things. Like whenever you're around a bunch of people and you're talking email security, like Hackchar says, one thing to remember: if you use DKIM, it'll sign your message with the public key that's in DNS. If your emails get stolen and leaked, they can be verified as real. And then somebody's going to talk about SPF, and then somebody said they're skeptical of Dune. I understand that, but
I would disagree with Corey.
it seriously feels like, to me, it's like when you get a bunch of Linux people together and they start talking about distros. Like if somebody has no idea what Linux is, they just sit in the room. They're like, I hope to God no one asks me any questions on this. So
yeah, and
I
then you
mean,
try
yeah,
to fix
like-
it, and you try to fix it, and then marketing emails aren't being sent out by your company.
exactly.
Or like you,
So,
you
like,
have
people are
like,
like,
they use like some like obscure like subdomain, and it's like, well, we tried to fix this. Like according to all of our metrics, like these are the only places emails should be coming from, and it's like, oh no, we can't do like.
and every time a new guy,
customer
Alex, every
communication.
time a new guy comes in, they're like, yeah, I got this. Have you seen our mail setup? It's a nightmare. Like,
Oh, yeah.
dude, don't look at it.
Don't look at
Don't touch it.
Yeah,
Don't touch
yeah,
it.
and I will say also, like, to be perfectly honest, there's two cards I want to play here. Number one is email filtering is in the realm of AI now. There's no one out there that's like even people that work at Proofpoint or Mimecast or wherever aren't able to say, here's exactly what email will make it past and here's what exactly email won't make it past. It's
that's
all
what I was
heuristics and
gonna say.
AI and complex machine learning. Like, so what that means is, in general, filtering has across the board gotten better. But it also means if you are one of these attackers and you have time to sit down and poke and prod, eventually you're going to find either a logical gap like this or just a simple gap. Like there's been much research over the years of like, if you include certain names or random things, it'll say, oh, this gives you a positive spam score because it has the name, whereas if you put like, please scan this QR code, it's going straight to spam. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we all have to just operate on the assumption that someone can bypass your email filter. Just assume it
At
can
some
happen.
point,
And
yes.
step with this is a
I
cool
was
way to
gonna
do
say
it.
in
This-
most
yeah.
in like most phishing email stuff, right? Every executive always asks, well, how did the email get in? That's always the first one.
And you're like,
True,
there's a
and
black
yes.
box of magic that allowed
And,
it through.
yeah.
Well,
In most-
SPF
in most
passing,
red team
yeah.
tests, that's the first thing I've always looked at. Okay, how did they bypass all of our filters? Just because it should be one of the easier things to block. At least that makes sure you have everything set up correctly, but it's not. And an attack like this, I think is actually like pretty cool. Even
It's
though,
super
like Corey
cool,
said, it's
but
not crazy. But
yeah.
as a blue teamer, I'm like, I would have no clue. I would be stumped
But-
and have to move to the next.
But Wade, like
attack.
Loki has been mentioning this too, but I think we can all agree, hats off. Well done, hackers. Like this is a cool attack, right? Like, once again, it comes back to like, oh, they exploited a vulnerability in WordPress or PHP. It's like, okay, well, that's just a day ending. And why? DOS attacks, they're using a botnet to bring down an organization. Okay, whatever. There's so many stories that we talk about where there's not a new novel technique involved in it. And this is awesome. Like for me, in the offensive space. It's just like,
Is there
Okay,
any
but
dates
one-
associated
one-
with those DNS records that where you could like, how would you figure it out? Like, can you go?
Oh,
look
you
at
would just,
when-
it's
when
like
this
Cloud
domain-
Raccoon or whatever, that tool from
Right?
back in the day. You just find stale DNS records, then you figure out if you can register them or not. Like,
wait,
it's like
is Space Jam, is that website still up?
Think
So,
I don't know.
so as a security vendor, should I right now go look and start blacklisting all of the old domains that are like 10 plus years or add a switch? Be like, this domain was registered or hasn't.
Yeah,
changed
you
in
should
this
do
long."
that. If you do that, you'll never get any phishes because all the big tech companies will not be able to send emails anymore.
It's
Yeah,
perfect.
no, I mean, there's no way around this. Honestly, okay, one final hot take is who the hell is clicking things from msnmarthastewart.com?
But I think
mom.
that was the example. I agree with that. I think
Like,
that
who's
was
like,
the
"Oh,
example.
shit,
But
MSN
this type of vulnerability was in a number of companies that
Correct.
had these old subdomains that they just expired out.
Yes. And it's super common. I mean, we've seen it with supply chain, like NPM. We talked about it a couple years ago on the show. Like, what was it? 40% of NPM packages are like maintainers include expired domains that you could just go register. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh God.
there's fun supply chain things all over the place of like people not registering. I mean, if you and we encounter this with our continuous penetration testing customers, they'll have stale buckets and things. Like, there'll be like a website that has a JavaScript that points to an Azure websites or Azure bucket or an S3 bucket that like no one owns anymore. So you could just go like register the bucket and put that JavaScript file with malicious JavaScript, and like now you have a keylogger on any site that uses that. This
Yeah,
is like a
and-
common thing. Stale DNS. I mean, DNS is a huge beast to manage, and yeah, it's tough.
I think also with some of these companies that I looked over the names, and one that stuck out to me with Marvel, and you just have all these probably mergers and acquisitions, and Marvel being like, okay, we're going to buy this property, and not realizing that there's like some subdomain from like a whole comic series 22 years ago that is still set up, and
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
gonna
you
get
had,
a
like,
phishing
CBS
message from
Spider-Man
Thor.
dot-
As soon as
Yeah.
Alex saw that one, like he's running around his house, like unplug everything, unplug everything.
Do not
Oh,
click
God,
the email
no,
from
not
Thor.
Marvel.
Do not click the email from Thor or Spider-Man. They're
Sorry.
both spam.
the Stark, the StarkIndustries.org promotional website or something there that was spun up for like the movie that they were
Yep.
going to have Tom Cruise do like back in 1998, and yeah,
We try not to talk about that, but thanks, Alex, for bringing up a dark history
the dark
chapter
history.
in the world of
well,
comics.
I'm still gonna get my Pepsi points and get a jet. Anyway, okay. Who wants to talk about United Health? I mean, I don't know how much you talked about it last week, but basically,
No,
at
we
this
got
point,
the Ivanti one is queued up,
okay, Ivanti.
so we'll get to United Health. Ivanti is
isn't
just like
Ivanti just the same article over and over again at this point? Like,
yeah, but it's one of those articles that's a gift that just keeps on giving. And Mandiant came out with some research where they estimate that thousands of these devices have been exploited and they've been patched. So a bunch of people scrambled to patch their devices, right? There was like, what was there? 5 different vulnerabilities that were showing up. And like 2 of them were remote execution. They were bad. They were bad vulnerabilities, what we're trying to say, and they just keep showing up. But the patches hit, and Mandiant believes that there has been thousands of these devices that were compromised, and they're still compromised. So basically, it's the equivalent of a whole bunch of like hackers get into the device, you patch it, the hackers are still on the patch device.
well, yeah. It
because-
turns out patching is not incident response.
yes, thank you.
like, like I applied the patch, but the back door is still in the system. Yep,
I just
that's how it
keep
works.
thinking that the CTO or CISO of Ivanti is like, oh, sir, we've got a call. Oh God, who is it this time? It's Mandiant. Just tell him to go away. They said it's important. I don't want to talk to Mandiant. It's your job. You've got to talk to Mandiant. And it's like, what now? Well, it turns out a bunch of your devices are actually still exploited. Crap. I should have
So-
taken that job as a sales rep at Cisco instead.
Is there any hard details on whether these are devices that were exploited prior, or are the like the patches ineffective? I'm assuming it's
No.
exploited. prior to
They
the
were
patch.
prior. So they think most of them are hacked from China. So literally, they got in before the patch came, or before the device was patched by the
Right.
owners
yeah,
of the devices.
before the disclosure, and yeah.
Yeah, and then and then they just stayed.
So, okay, we talked about it on the show, but like this is that CISA emergency directive, the first one they ever did. So my question is,
they just were, and I think that's part of it. They're just like unplug the freaking things because it was
well,
the Chinese.
the directive
but then they
said
patched and
patch
plugged back
or
in.
unplug, right?
Yeah,
But the directive should have said patch and unplug and also do incident response and then turn it back on. Like you can't and Ivanti, to their credit, have released like integrity checking solutions. Like turns out when you update the firmware or a patch, you should like make sure the patches are good. So like, I don't know, basically, this is one where you had to be pretty short-sighted to still be vulnerable to this. You're warned. You're told by an emergency directive either unplug it or patch. But I will say the emergency directive probably should have, I don't know if it did or not, but it should have accounted for, while you're patching, maybe check for backdoors and do some IR on your device at the same time, right?
This sounds
gotta
really
call out
bad,
something.
but as like a blue team,
Shadow Ninja
remember.
85 said, wasn't there an IR game somewhere that includes persistence as one of the key things to figure out? What is this magical game you speak
Dungeons
of?
and breaches?
Dungeons and like cubicles and compromises? No. It's backdoors and breaches. You can go to play.backdoorsandbreaches.com and you can play the game. And yes, when we set up the game, literally persistence is one of those things you have to figure out as part of IR.
And for those working at Ivanti, warning, the game may cause PTSD. So
Yeah, probably. Too real, man. Too real.
the game might
Corey,
feel too real to you. Yeah.
To go back to your question, in CISA's advisory, they said this, I'm quoting here, the safest course of action for network defenders is to assume a sophisticated threat actor may deploy rootkit level persistence on the device that has been reset and laid dormant for an arbitrary amount of time.
So they definitely warned people appropriately, and people were like, I patched. Apt get update, apt get upgrade, reboot. All right, we're good. Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow. Yeah, I don't know. Not
or,
great.
Another perspective is the business said, hey, we can't be down. Plug those things back in. You said all you have to do is patch. And it seems like there's a conversation about risk management internally in the company. Maybe they were forced to turn it back on. Maybe they didn't allot enough time for incident response. I think it's a cultural issue.
Or maybe they had no logs and they're like, no logs, no incident.
Is my volume good? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just found out like my volume was down to 10% on the system level, and that's why nobody here has heard me for the last like 6 weeks. Perfect. That's where I belong.
Take it back. Wait, take it back just a hair.
Just a hair.
You are clipping.
Okay.
I can hear the
There
AC
we go.
voltage linking through your house. Anyway.
Can you? You can hear, dude. I got a
There we
graphics
go.
card.
I can hear your heartbeat. You're running a little fast. Anyway.
My question, like, this is to more Alex and Mike. Like, I will admit, as a blue teamer, I don't think, like, after a big patch has occurred, I don't think I've ever done, like, let's just focus on this box after the patch and make sure that it wasn't compromised. Like, we have other stuff going on, right? We have detections for it. And I probably ran detections to see if it got compromised at one point, but I've never, like, checked to make sure that that persistence wasn't already there, at least, which I sound really stupid about. Like, I feel
like you would if CISA said it's probably backdoor.
That's definitely true if it was CISA, right? But even then, like, I think we know my relationship with the CISA reports is like 90% of the time they're just like, it's vulnerable, and I'm like, all right, cool. Senior management, this is vulnerable. You guys need to make sure you patch that. That's the majority of my CISA reporting. But
wow,
I don't know, Mike or Alex, you guys got any hot takes on that?
I don't know. I like the breach and attack sims that you have. Those modules oftentimes get very updated for these things. So then you do that validation of, okay, just run the latest attack techniques against your Ivantis if you have them in your environment, and go, okay, well, we patched this. The attack updated.
But that wouldn't help either because it already had a rootkit.
Yeah, it already had.
Yeah.
Guys, what we need to do is we need to create an AV company for Ivanti devices now.
Well, hold on. I got a better idea, John. How about we just do like we call ourselves the Ivanti liquidators, and we just walk into data centers with sledgehammers and we fix the problem.
Ivanti liquidators.
It's a good.
And
hair
we
brand.
all have mustaches, and we have like those fire axes. Like we're just
We're
like,
We're almost
has
there.
CISA issued an emergency directive to you? We'll come liquidate your Ivanti devices at no charge.
You're right.
For,
Mine just made money. I think that your idea brings wellness and like a
It's
sense of
also
purpose
you
in
can sign
life.
up. It's like a volunteer thing,
Nah,
Like
I dig it. I like your idea better. Let's do that.
To answer Wade's question for me, usually what happens in my instances is that I'll see that there's something that's breachable that we've got. I'll do a hunt to see how much we've got available, and then it comes, have we been breached yet? So it's hard to say that afterwards I make sure that nobody's still on there, but definitely beforehand and before they're patching, if I see somebody's been on there that we have been breached at that point, then yes, after we've done, I do the due diligence. But just to think of it afterwards, I don't think, and I haven't been asked that by much
Right?
as far as upper management goes.
Right? I'm
Yeah.
like second guessing my entire career right now.
Sure,
Like,
but if CISA says
Because-
okay, but if CISA
Yeah,
says
because
it
I
has
think
a
it is
root
kind of
kit,
flippant for us just to say, like, what do you mean you didn't do IR after you installed the patch? Like, it would break IT if we did
Yeah.
full IR after every
fair, but every patch notification does not say by CISA this probably is already rooted with a rootkit. Like that's like, I don't know. I mean,
the last time I did it was SolarWinds, but
Yeah.
this is the next time you're gonna do it. But yeah. Anyway, we should move on. Let's talk about leaky GitHub or infected GitHub because that was one that Andrew came to talk about and then he had to go. But we should still talk.
We
about
lost
it in
Andrew?
his
Oh,
honor.
crap. I didn't know. I'm sorry.
So this is
He's not dead.
I still
know.
have his hot. Yeah, he's still alive. for
Oh,
those
he's
wondering.
not? Oh, screw it then. Carry on.
Okay, no one has died during the show that we know of. Moving on. Infected repos on GitHub. This is something that Andrew basically, his hot take, which I can parrot, was that they've been reporting, his company has been reporting on this for years. We've talked about it on the show many times, but essentially this is research from a company called Apiro, which sounds like a supervillain. And he goes, Apiro! And then he like finds all your vulnerabilities, and then he goes, Disapiro. But anyway, yeah, so essentially these are like, I guess, watering hole attacks is how I would describe them. Essentially, some threat actor clones popular repos like Twitter follow bot, Discord boost tool, Twitch follow bot, and hundreds more. And then they inject malware into the repos and hope that people just clone the wrong repo. So yeah, that's basically the entire attack. I guess, does anyone have any hot takes on this? It seems, I guess it's one of those things that's like, I guess GitHub could scan for quote unquote malware, but
don't they
it's
already?
like the whole, it's the App Store thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
do
thought
they?
they
Because
did.
like,
They do
Already.
Yeah, like super
Yeah.
common attack that I've seen is red teamer hosts malware. Like they upload the malware to GitHub, pull it down real quick, and then immediately delete it because the GitHub usually finds it and deletes it. And
I
you
mean,
don't get
Metasploit's
blacklisted,
on
but-
there.
Yeah, but Metasploit's like trusted source, right? It's
Yeah, but
not
that's
like,
different. That's not malware.
Totally
right.
different.
If GitHub account is 10 days old and has malware, alert.
And not
It's
Metasploit.
not malware. It's
not
different.
Metasploit.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know, but like, I guess it's the whole App Store thing. We've talked about it for years. Everyone knows every App Store is potentially vulnerable to malware. There's just no way, if you have the volume and you have the, like, you can't thoroughly scan and manually check every GitHub repo. The volume is too big. Same's true with App Stores. Like,
Apiro can.
Apiro! You have malware? Disapiro! Okay. All right. Moving on. Yeah. I mean, I guess my only hot take on this is be careful what you clone. I think, like,
Do not trust sources. Isn't that what it
well-
always? Do you trust this source? Isn't that what it asks after you clone it? And you go, and everyone always just says yes.
well, that's
Why wouldn't
before or
you?
after. That's before or after you deployed that directly to production.
Usually before. So then my host and production are compromised. So
You mean you don't clone directly onto a production web app and then just install it from there?
that sounds a lot easier. I don't know why I haven't been doing that. You're absolutely right.
That's way safer. Yeah, I guess, does GitHub have a role here to like put a little verified blue check mark on things? Like, this
Ooh,
is
verified.
malware free.
Don't tell them. There's going to be verified repos pretty soon for
So let's go-
$10.
So back to the previous article we were talking about. Is it really GitHub's responsibility to check everything? Kind of like, yeah, we applied the patch, but they were still the deeply embedded in the system. Can't GitHub say the exact same thing that we said for the previous article? Just to play
Totally.
devil's advocate here?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like, they essentially, I guess what I would say is like every tech company is in the same boat, which is like they're kind of a public utility that has no moderation and they're kind of not. And this is like actually right now the subject of a big Supreme Court thing. I don't know if anyone's following, but basically, truly from a business and general perspective, it's not like I can go sue GitHub for having malware on it, right? And I can't sue the Android App Store for having malware on it, and I can't sue Apple for having malware in their App Store. Like, but at the same time, they are clearly focused on trying to take down some malware and trying to like make it, from a business perspective, they should prevent cloned repos with malware in it, because that's super like not good for their business and general image. But like,
Kelly,
how do they do it? I don't know.
I've got another take on it, and my take is they got to at least try, even if they suck at it. Because if you look at like Twitter, you look at Facebook, you're looking at all these different things, all the way back to MySpace, you're not really using that service for what it is. You're actually getting content moderation, or that's one of the biggest selling points of it, right? At least it was a long time ago on Twitter. But at any rate, so you have these places that you kind of have a forum or a commons, right? And there is some responsibility, right? I mean, you can't say it's infinitely elastic and say, well, GitHub doesn't worry about anything, because then all of a sudden people could start putting child porn on GitHub, and that would be bad. And you could argue, and I believe that it's a valid argument, that that's not really GitHub's responsibility, but still having legal pornography on your service would be bad for business, and eventually people just aren't going to use it. So whenever you're looking at it from a legal liability perspective, I don't think that GitHub has a huge legal liability, but they do have a reputational liability if all of a sudden GitHub is being used constantly to host malware like GCAT or Metasploit or Sliver. God, I can't even speak. Jeez. You have all of these different things, but that's very, very different than all of a sudden people that are now slipping malware into different repositories, especially if it's being used again and again and again, various C++ libraries or Python projects or things of that nature. So if you're looking at GitHub, I would argue that they have some level of responsibility to do some level of checking, but there's ultimately going to be limits whenever you start getting to the diminishing returns of how much effort you're putting into it.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree, because I was thinking of it in kind of like a non-tech form of it's like you go to the grocery store, you get some stuff, you want to make sure there's not like poison in it. Now, is the grocery store checking every product that they have to make sure that it is not, poisonous or anything? No, but they have some responsibility to make sure that, hey, they're not just a store that's selling bad products.
I like the
People
taste of
aren't
E.
licking
coli,
my ice
though.
cream.
Hey, you
E.
have to
coli
check
is
everything
yummy.
you come. You have to check
Thanks,
everything.
Alex.
that you
Now I have
bring
a new
home.
nightmare. I didn't even think of that.
There
as
was
a-
that.
Well-
There was that the TikTok trend where people would go in and then like open an ice cream, lick it, and
Yeah.
put it back. Right?
What?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
The
hold
hell?
Hold on.
Yeah.
It's so much
Very-
worse than this, because in this world, as an example, has anyone gotten an email from their grocery store that isn't Costco about a recall? No?
Okay, good point.
Neither-
No,
neither have
they
I.
post them. They
But
post
how many?
them, so
No,
you have to find them yourself.
Who is
question
going and
was-
checking all the products that they've ever purchased manually to see if they
Now,
have
I
salmonella?
I think I want my
disagree.
grocery store to have
I
my
disagree,
email address.
Corey, but there's been many times I've walked into a grocery store and they have had signs up that say that they've recalled a specific type of lettuce or spinach or something like that.
Yep.
That has happened.
Sure, but I already have the
And
E.
also,
coli, and I already ate
my
it all, which
grocery
is why I'm
store-
back at the grocery store, because I already ate all the food.
Yeah, and my grocery store doesn't have my email address. At least I hope they don't.
That's
No.
fair.
They have
but
your
I
phone
can make
number.
I will
Yeah,
make a burner email that's E. coli at fakedomain.com, and if I get an email there, then something I'm eating is currently tainted, and I should go vomit. Anyway,
My
okay.
grocery store has your email.
Okay.
Great.
Yes.
Great.
And by the way, John, they're selling it, and now that the president has said they're not allowed to do that anymore, they're really mad.
You mean the security's getting in the way of our security? No.
And to wrap this up, though, I do want to say, as we know from the show, there have been no breaches involving developer stuff at all. And we know that developers are super supportive of putting security as their top priority, and this should have no future repercussions.
You're right.
whatsoever.
This is a hypothetical that hasn't happened and never will happen.
No, it
Good
did not
point,
happen to
Corey.
Microsoft like a month ago or anything. Definitely not.
No, we've never. And for those of you that may be viewing this podcast internationally, and English is your second or third or maybe fourth language, we just demonstrated something called sarcasm. Just so. Use my ex-girlfriend's parents' phone number. I'm not kidding. That's a little creepy.
If it works, it works. Also, 0000000 always works.
Does it really? I'm gonna have to try that.
Yeah,
Well,
I
I'm
mean,
gonna
there's
start using
you
it
know
more.
the developers left some codes in there for us.
Some
Talk
poor
about developers.
jackass has that number. Why do I keep getting calls from Home Depot?
Yeah, the
That's your number. Yeah, 8675309
Oh,
also usually
yeah,
works.
530.
6675309. Oh my god.
Your area code.
Somebody in every
8675309.
area code has that. Yep.
Jenny.
Yes,
Yeah.
very true.
Does
Anyway,
anyone have?
There it
other-
is.
yeah, last article.
Let's do another one. What do we want to go with? Do we want to talk about? I don't know. Corey, you want to pick one?
I don't have one to pick. Does anyone else?
I'm going to pick.
I can pick one
I'm
at
going to
random.
pick an
but-
easy layup to close us out. Hackers backed by Russia and China are infecting SOHO routers.
Ooh, this is a good one.
I
enjoy
like this one because it's like another one of those water is wet news stories.
SOHO routers. What are we in New York City or London? I don't care.
SOHO. By the way, does anybody know what SOHO stands for? Not the people
Small
on the
office,
show.
home office. Right?
And SOHO, what does it mean? Like if you're in London or in New York City? So
it
anyway, we'll
means
see if anybody gets that.
I can't afford home office. I can't afford small office.
I can't afford anything. Are you working here? So this is something that nation states, like if you're looking at a lot of like nation state cyber adversaries, offensive groups, things like that. And now I got the Rancid song in my head. IT career questions. You suck. Ruby, 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 SOHO. Thank you. Thank you. You ruined it. God, that's going to be in my head all day. But if you look at like the Vault breaches and you look at the Shadow Brokers breach, there was a lot of exploits for SOHO routers. And the reason why is SOHO routers are many times the point of entry for attackers to gain access as initial access to gain a foothold into organizations. And then when you couple that with the fact that a lot of SOHO routers are very, very consistently distributed in a place like Washington, D.C. or Moscow. There'll be one ISP that is providing the SOHO routers for all of the different internet like access for all the citizens in that area. It becomes a very, very juicy target where you can develop an exploit for that device. And now you have highly targeted access into a population that is probably going to have some intel that you need. This is also an area that as pen testers, we don't pen test. Like I can count on my hand maybe like 4 times in the entire career of Black Hills Information Security where people were like, hey, we want you to look at our like consumer-based router to see if there's any vulnerabilities that can be exploited in this particular device. So yeah, nation states love these exploits. And I don't know, I really recommend that if you're using something like a SOHO router, you should also use a Connect Secure VPN device because they're clearly more, no, I'm joking.
Nation states love these vulnerabilities. Click now to see
Love
the
these
top 10.
vulnerabilities. But the biggest thing that sucks about these vulnerabilities is even though they have a critical mass in a geographic location, the critical mass tends to be small enough that it doesn't blow up into wide news whenever vulnerabilities are discovered for them as well.
Well, okay, John, you made that sound really sexy. Don't get me wrong.
What's
but-
that? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
You made that whole thing sound really sexy. You were like, oh, CVEs and exploits and things. But wasn't this just default creds? Like,
A lot of times it is. A lot of times it's, but sometimes it's even worse than default creds. Sometimes it's like a forced browsing vulnerability that gets you to an administration panel, right?
yeah.
But a lot of the vulnerabilities that you see in these devices are incredibly, incredibly basic vulnerabilities.
And they're afterthoughts. The devices themselves are afterthoughts. Like, let's say your company's setting up a branch office in Washington, D.C., like John said. You're just like, I don't know, go to Best Buy. You're not like,
What?
you know.
What's
And-
the SOHO router that you would recommend then? Like honestly, I have cheap like Asus stuff, right? And
I recommend
but-
pfSense recompiled to run on BS.
Well,
I
no,
knew you were gonna say
hold
that,
up,
right?
hold up. Okay, you want to know the real recommendation? It's anything that auto updates on its
Yes.
own.
Yes.
That is the recommendation. I don't care whether it's a WireGuard or whatever they're called, the ones that John had. I forget what they were called, but or Ubiquity or whatever it is. Arguably, these were Ubiquity, but for a while, and actually, I believe now you still have to configure Ubiquity to auto update itself.
Yeah.
And everyone should go do that if you have a Ubiquity device.
And that
But
is
whatever
a
you
public
have-
service reminder, even
That actually
without
requires-
a Ubiquity or auto updating device, like update the firmware on your routers because it's
Yes.
you're going to go in and you're going to see that it's like, oh, there's been a firmware update
Yeah,
that
but
is
Alex-
2 years old when I haven't updated it in 3
Alex,
years.
how do you tell that to your grandmother?
I know, yeah,
or grandfather or
don't, yeah,
whatever?
You,
You know,
don't.
like
That's
the-
why you only purchase devices that auto update themselves. Anyway,
Yeah. But a lot of
or-
times you don't have that option. And a lot of times it's provided by,
Right.
like, you can have your own device. But let's say that you have your
Yes,
own
yeah.
device. It's secure. It's amazing. You wrote it in Rust, whatever. Oh, you have this amazing device. And I just lost my camera. Whoa, there's a new camera, new angle.
I'm scared.
It's weird. It's weird. Just roll with it. But you have this amazing security device. There we go. There's the new me, everybody.
John, you look great.
You have this amazing device, and I'm going to switch back to.
Is that a
my
new lip
regular
gloss?
camera.
What's popping?
Looks good.
I'm working at an opposite angle, or acute angle from Kelly.
Look
since
down
we're
at
just-
us directly, please. I'm scared.
But I completely effing forgot what I was talking about. What the hell was I
We
saying?
were talking about buying routers for your grandparents.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's say that you have a secure router. You do all the things that we talk about. Your edge device is still going to be provided by your ISP. And in many of those devices, you have settings that can absolutely be used to compromise the rest of the network, like DNS settings. Like, what are the actual DNS servers that this device is actually going to forward all DNS requests to? You can rewrite those. So you can literally use this as a means to gain access to internal systems. Even if it's not exploit and then pivot, you can use it to set those things up. So a lot of this stuff is out of our control, honestly. And I
I own
honestly
my
do
edge
not know.
device.
I have no idea what the solution to this problem is.
Well,
at
okay,
all.
here's another good solution. You can bring in the Ivanti liquidators to just destroy your cellular router.
Liquidators!
Every like couple months, you just destroy it and buy another one. Like, gotta keep them
You know what,
guessing, right?
dude? With the Ivanti liquidators, we can just come in. Like, we don't have to wait for a security breach. We can just
No.
periodically come
Well,
in
we
as
could-
a good spring
Yeah,
cleaning. And just,
totally. It's proactive. It's you just destroy all your networking equipment regularly, and then you don't have to worry.
Yes, I love it. I think that this is a great idea. It gets us out in the country.
Totally.
It involves exercise, and
Yep.
it's important to get exercise.
I just use
And-
ConnectWise to connect in, and then just
No,
do
no, no,
RMR
no.
Getting a little
star.
close
You
to
want to
home
use?
there.
Hold on.
Oh.
Did you get the ConnectWise repo off of GitHub? Because it's
Oh, I
infected.
totally did. I installed it on my grandma's computer so I could easily come in and then configure her router to auto update.
Grandma,
So
how
she's
come you
good.
haven't updated your firmware?
Genuinely
What the hell?
genuinely not a bad idea though for legitimately to have an RMM tool in your grandma's environment where you can update her stuff regularly. It's
Actually,
I also
well,
installed a
joking
Russian
aside,
keyboard
That is a
on
good
there.
idea, actually.
Okay,
But
so
yeah.
what are we supposed to walk away with this? Walk away from?
Hey,
Auto
we
updates
still
on
have
your
jobs,
Okay.
Kelly.
Here's what you walk away with. Number one,
We do.
update your networking equipment regularly. Just do it. Even if it's automatic, great. If it's not automatic, still do it. Number two, bring in someone to sledgehammer your existing network equipment and replace it on a regular basis.
Avanti liquidators.
Yeah, I was gonna add a point that it's like for like John said, like, well, what do you do if you're like you're a grandparent and you don't know how to do these? It's like befriend a nerd. Like befriend a nerd. If you're a nerd out there, befriend somebody that needs your help.
We like
it's-
pizza.
When we go
and
like
beer.
we like pizza. Like you give me pizza. It's like, you feed me pizza. I'll update your router, and it's like that's part of the solution.
That's
is-
the solution.
One
right
of
there.
the guys I went to school with, he had a consulting company that he was like an IT guy, and he told me his best customers were elderly people, and he would give them a stack of business cards, and then next thing you know, his phone is ringing off the hook because they just pass him around like, this guy fixed my computer, call him. And like he had no ads, no anywheres. It was all word of mouth. And I was amazed. He told me the money he was bringing in, and he's just like a single dude going over patching people's computers, showing them how to print, and just making money.
And,
So,
and
Showing
the
how
money
to
is
print, I'm
absolutely-
out. If it involves printers, I'm out.
Yeah, he loves printers. No,
He's doing the
Corey,
Lord's work.
Corey,
Oh,
it's an add-on service for Ivanti liquidators. Like we can
Well,
solve your
we'll
VPN update issues. We can also
Nice.
solve all of your print problems as well.
Yes, we can liquidate your printer in addition to your security vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Alex, it reminds me of Wedding Singer, where he gets paid for his piano lessons with the 2 meatballs in his hands.
I forgot about that scene.
That is a good one.
All right, close it down. That's a good place to end it.
Let's end it there because that's great. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for attending the news. And with that, we'll see you next week.